Good day, tech enthusiasts. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we are diving deep into the realm of database migration, tackling a challenge that many encounter, migrating a TDE encrypted database from on-premise servers to the secure haven of Azure SQL Managed Instance. Transparent data encryption, or TDE, adds an extra layer of complexity to the migration process. But fear not, because we have got you covered. In this video, we are not just addressing the hurdles posed by TDE encryption during migration. We are providing you with a step-by-step guide on how to seamlessly move your encrypted data. We will explore the intricacies of exporting and importing TDE certificates, modifying Azure SQL Managed Instance configurations, and ensuring a successful database restoration. So, if you ever face the intimidating cannot find server certificate with thumbprint error during your migration endeavors, you are in the right place. By the end of this video, you will not only understand the nuances of TDE encryption in migration, but also master the art of overcoming it. Get ready to unravel the mysteries of TDE encryption and embark on a migration journey like never before. Let's dive in. I'll be migrating database JBDB that is hosted on SQL Server 2022 on-premise database server to a general purpose Azure SQL Managed Instance. What I'll do is I will take a backup of this database JBDB and then move it to the Azure storage. Maybe I will use the backup to URL method and then take a full database backup of JBDB database to Azure storage. And then what I'll do is once the backup is completed, I will try restoring that backup on the general purpose Azure SQL Managed Instance. So this way, we will be able to migrate the required database from on-premise to Azure SQL Managed Instance. Yep. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to perform the backup. So if you see here, I'm connected to this on-premise database server. I'm using this command and I'll be taking the backup. Yeah. So let the backup complete. Once the backup completes, let's open the Azure portal and then check if the backup file is present in the Azure portal or not. Yeah. So the backup should be completing shortly. So it is 9900. Yep. The backup is completed now. So let's head to our portal here, Azure portal, and then let's do a refresh. Then if you can see here, the backup is taken now, JBDB underscore 29. It should be September, but I've misspelled it as DEP. That doesn't matter. So let's go back to the SSMS, and then now what we'll do is we will head on to perform the restoration. Yeah. So if you look at it here, I'm connected to the general purpose Azure SQL Managed Instance. So let's go ahead and start the restore here. And then let's wait for the restore to complete. It's a straightforward process wherein you take the backup on the on-premise server and then move it across and then restore it. This is kind of an offline approach which requires some sort of a downtime. Maybe what we can do is we can take a full database backup, transaction log backups, and restore it on the Azure SQL Managed Instance manually. And during the cutover, you can take a final backup and restore. That can also be done. But right now, I'm not worried much about the data, so I'm just taking a full database backup and then restoring it on Azure SQL Managed Instance. So let's try refreshing the managed instance and then see if the restore has started. So the restore has not yet started, so let's give it some more time. I'm expecting it's gonna take at least 1 minute 30 seconds or 40 seconds for the restore to start. So let's give it some more time and then we'll take it from there. Usually we use several methods other than backup and restore. We can use the Azure Data Studio. We can use the Azure Database Management Service. And I've seen scenarios where log shipping can be configured to minimize the downtime. And also transactional replication is something that can also be done. So in our case, we are not able to complete the restore. We are basically getting an error, cannot find server certificate with thumbprint, this one. So that means like we have TDE enabled um, on the on-premise server. So now what we need to do is like we need to move that particular certificate. So as far as the managed instance is concerned, we know that it is the TDE is enabled by default using service managed key. In my case, I have utilized a customer managed key. So I have brought in my own certificate and I have encrypted it. So now what we'll do is like we will basically try moving the certificate, and then let's see if we can restore the database. What we'll do is like we will use Azure Data Studio to move the certificate. We have other option as well, but according to me, using Azure Data Studio and then moving the certificate across to managed instance is comparably easy. So let's follow that approach for this video. So let's open the Azure Data Studio. The first thing that you need to keep in mind is like you need to have this Azure SQL migration extension to be installed. So you need to search for SQL migration, and then you can install that Azure SQL migration from the marketplace. Once that is done, you can click on the profile, you can click on these accounts, and then you can add your Azure account there, so that that will be used for us to navigate to the Azure SQL Managed Instance. Yeah. So now let's go back to the connections here. So what I'm going to do is like I need to add the required on-premise server. So what you can do is like you can click on this connection here, and then you can add your required on-premise server. In this case, I'm using the authentication type of SQL login. You can use whichever is appropriate to you. And also like in my case, I'm setting false for encrypt connection. Yeah. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to just right click here and then click on manage, and click on this Azure SQL migration, and then click on migrate to Azure SQL. Yeah. So now what I'm going to do, since I'm going to just migrate JBDB database to Azure SQL Managed Instance, I'm going to select only that and click on next. I will leave the assessment to complete. Once the assessment completes, we will get to know some more details as far as the possible migration paths are concerned. So right now, what I'm able to see is like we have an option for Azure SQL Managed Instance, IaaS, Azure VM, and Azure SQL Database. As far as Managed Instance and SQL Database is concerned, it tells like there is a problem. That is 0 out of 1 database can be migrated without issues. That means like there seems to be some issue with one database. So let's click on this Azure SQL Managed Instance, yeah, and then click on this view or select. And then you see there is one issue for JBDB, and when you click on that, it clearly tells like database is using transparent data encryption. So it basically tells like to restore an existing TDE encrypted database, the required TDE certificate must first be imported into SQL managed instance. Yeah, so that is something that you need to do. So let's click on select here, and then you are given an option how do you export the certificate. So in this case, I'm going to select export my certificate and private keys to the target. And second option is like you have already migrated the certificate across to managed instance. If that is the case, you need to select the second option, but in my case, I'm going to export it now. So you need to provide a network path here. So what I'll do is like I will give this network path. This is on my database server, so I'm giving that, and then I'm giving the consent to use my credentials for accessing the certificate. Yeah. So let's click on apply here. And then if you see here, we have this one transparent data encryption enabled database selected for migration. you are given Azure Data Studio access to migrate it. Yeah. So let's click on next here. Okay, so you basically have to use your account to log into your Azure portal, and then you need to select appropriate AD tenant and then the required subscription. And then you need to select the location of the managed instance where you are going to move the certificate and also its resource group. Once these things are selected, what you need to do is like you need to click on this migrate certificates. Yep, so the migration is happening. In my case, the migration has failed. So if I look at the message, it basically tells like migration status failed, could not find file. So that's the error that I'm getting here. So it basically tells like it is not an access denied error, but I'm getting a message stating like could not find file. Seems to be little weird here because why would the Azure Studio not able to find the file? Because it is basically writing the file and then creating the certificate onto managed instance. It is the one that is doing, but not sure why we are getting this error. What we'll do now is like let's go to the location where we have this um, uh, file. So if I see here C drive SQL DBs CERT, this is where I'm able to this is where the data studio has written it. Now let's go to the network location, that is the back symbol that I used, the network location. We have the folder, but when I open it, what I'm seeing here is like basically I'm seeing that there is no files here. So now this gives us some sense, like because if you look at it as C drive, the location, then we are able to see the folder and also the files. But when I look at the same location using the backvac, that is the UNC path, I'm not able to see the file. So that is the reason Data Studio is also giving an error here. Okay, what we will do now, we will go to this file here and then just right click. Let's see what happens. Let's click on properties and then let's go to security here and then see. And what I'm seeing here is like it is basically telling like you must have read permission to view the properties of this object. So what is strange is like we have given full permission for the SQL service account and also to the account with which I have logged into this particular server. So even though after giving that full permission, what I'm seeing is like the files that are created inside uh, doesn't have any attributes, permission attributes added to it. So that seems to be a little strange for me. So let's run this command in PowerShell, which is get-smb share, cert pipe symbol and F1. Let's run that. And then if we look at it here, what I'm basically seeing is like the folder enumeration mode is access based. So I'm seeing that here. And what I'm seeing is like this could be the problem here. To be frank, let me be very clear. When I was doing this demo for the first time, I got this error and I had to get in touch with one of the platforms expert, and he basically after 4 or 5 hours of troubleshooting, he told me like let's try changing this folder enumeration method from access based to unrestricted, and that is what I'm going to do now here. So what I'm basically doing is like I'm changing it from access based to unrestricted. Let's do that. Let's give S here. It is done now. So let's look at it one more time. And then now if you see here, the folder enumeration mode is unrestricted. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to let's do a refresh here. What we'll do now, we will try retry the migration. Yeah. So I'm retrying the migration and let's see if it is completing. So what I'm seeing is like I'm getting a message could not file, the same message I'm seeing. Okay, so now I've opened the Azure Data Studio as an administrator. So that's the important thing. You need to open the Azure Data Studio as run as administrator. So if you can see here, it is an administrator now. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on migrate certificate. and then let's wait for it to either fail or succeed. So in this case, if you can see here, we are able to successfully migrate the certificate. So if you see here, migration status succeeded, TDE certificate migrated successfully. Yeah. So let's click on done here, and then let's click next. So we will select the appropriate subscription here, and then the resource group, and then the Azure database migration service. Yeah. So now, if you want to proceed with the Azure database migration services, then you need to go forward from here. But what I'm going to do is like I will first show you guys how do we go about with the Azure Data Studio in an offline migration. I've already created an video for online migration, so I'm not going to use online migration this time. So, but for this time, I will use offline migration, and then I will show you guys like how do we go about migrate this particular database. And once this is completed, we will delete the database from Azure SQL Managed Instance, and then use the restore command as well. Okay, now right now we will go ahead with Azure Data Studio. So let's click on next. It's very critical that you need to select the Azure database migration service. If you don't select that, you will not be able to proceed further if you want to migrate from Azure Data Studio. Let's click on next here. Okay, so we are going to copy the source database, which is JBDB, and the target database name is JBDB. We are going to use this resource group. This is the storage account, and this is the blob container. And as soon as I selected the blob container, I'm able to see that backup. Yeah. So if you so what I've done is like I've selected the offline migration, and then I've told like I have the backup in the storage account, and then now we have this backup file. So let's click on next here, and we have all the details here, and then let's start the migration. So now, so the migration is starting now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on refresh here, then scroll down, and if you see here, it basically tells like database migration is in progress is one. So let's click on that. And then if you see here, the database is getting restored. Now let's head to our managed instance in the SSMS, and then do a refresh, and then see if the JBDB database is in restoring state. And if it is there, then it gives us a indication that the database restore has started. So we were able to basically move the database, move the certificate from on-premise to managed instance using the Azure Data Studio. And then from the Azure Data Studio, we have started the restore, the migration. So it is going on. So let's wait for it to complete. And once the restore completes, we will take it from there. Okay, so the restore is completed. When you click on refresh, there seems to be nothing. So what we'll do, we will go to the dashboard here, and then do a refresh here. Then if you can see, the database migrations in progress is 0, and database migrations completed is 2. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to head back to the SSMS, and then do a refresh here. And then if I see here, the database JBDB is online now. So now let's run this query to check the encryption status on the Azure SQL Managed Instance. Yeah. So we know that as far as the on-premise is concerned, we have an thumbprint there. Just want to compare the thumbprints there, here and there. Yeah. So let's remove this, and then let's go here. So if I see here, this is the on-premise thumbprint. Yeah. So what I want to check is like whether it is going to be the same one as far as Azure SQL Managed Instance is also concerned. Yeah. So now if you see here, as far as JBDB is concerned, we have the encrypted thumbprint as this one, which is same as the previous database JBS, but it's completely different to what we have on the on-premise database server. So we might have a question here. So what happens to this particular database after we moved the certificate from on-premise, whether this particular database that is restored from on-premise will use the same certificate as the on-premise. The answer is like it will not be using the certificate that was moved from on-premise. It will just use that certificate for restoration process. Once the restoration completes, whatever encryption that you have in managed instance, let it be using the service managed key, or in my case, my managed instance is encrypted using customer managed key. What happens is like that particular certificate will be used to encrypt this particular database after the restoration is completed. So that is something that you keep in mind. Let's look at the public documentation, which explains the same thing. So if you see here, it basically tells like a migrated certificate is used for restore of TDE protected database only. Soon after restore is done, the migrated certificate gets replaced by a different protector, either a service managed certificate or an asymmetric key from the key vault, depending on the type of TDE you set on the instance. This is a very critical question. As soon as you plan to do this restore, the logical thinking might tell you that it will be using the same certificate that is on-premise, but the explanation is that it doesn't use the certificate on the on-premise. It basically uses the on-premise certificate just for the restoration. As soon as you migrate the certificate from on-premise to Azure SQL Managed Instance, once the restoration completes, it basically uses the certificate that is deployed on your Azure SQL Managed Instance, and then it basically encrypts that particular database. So this is the article, migrate a certificate of a TDE protected database to Azure SQL Managed Instance. Yeah. Now what I'm going to do is like I'm basically going to delete this database JBDB, and then what I'll do is like I will issue the restore statement directly. I'm not going to use Azure Data Studio. I just want to run that TSQL statement to restore the database, and then ensure like the database restore also happens fine, so that you guys can get double bonanza, wherein you can also learn restoring or doing an offline migration using Data Studio, and also see how do we restore the database using TSQL. So this is the error last time we got it. So now what we'll do is like let's initiate the restore and then see what happens. We know that it's going to take at least 1 minute 30 seconds at least to start the restore. So let's wait basically for it. Let's do a restore here. Sorry, let's do a refresh here, and then let's see if the database is there. Okay, so the restoration has started. So this time it started within 20 seconds or yeah, 25 seconds. So let's wait for the restore to complete, and then I think we should be good. So I see the database online here. Let's wait for the command to complete. Okay, so the restore completed. It took close to 1 minute 10 seconds. Let's do a select star on one of the table, and then see if we are able to get the data. So I'm going to run select star from dbo example underscore table. Let's try with this table as well. I'm able to see the data perfectly. I don't see any issues at all. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Jai Hind.